All right, we are live. Welcome to the Rabyd Atheist. That's Rabyd, not Rabbit. Welcome to the Rabyd Atheist. I'm your host, Ed Rabyd, a former pastor turned atheist, now compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. This is my first experiment with a live reaction to a video. I've never really done that before. And I'm trying to learn some of the capabilities of StreamYard here, but I'm going to do the best I can. I want to, as everybody's kind of filing in, I can see that one of the things I want to touch base with is, the early part of the week I didn't do much because I had a family event. We were making up for the fact that we missed Thanksgiving on Tuesday, and then I had a lot of business and errands to run on Monday, and I just didn't, everything wasn't ready to where I wanted to post something online yet. We'll just put it that way. So I'm a little bit behind on this week, but it's not because of any sickness or anything like that. I'm doing very well. It's more of things got busy for me. And so here we are. But today I wanted to do a live video reaction to a video put out by TPUSA. Boy, I could have a lot of fun with that name. So it's one of those things where, because I did a video on Christian nationalism where I reacted to another atheist, and one of the comments on that video was this one, and it says, Tom here says that I was lying about Christian nationalism and fear mongering, and my agenda of atheism is an empty lie. So it was one of those things where I'm like, okay, he also left this video link to this video that I'm going to react to today. So this is kind of where the video came from. But I want to do with a comment. First of all, I'm not lying about Christian nationalists. I used to hang out with them when I was a Christian. A lot of Assemblies of God fundamentalist types are also Christian nationalists. They believe that if Christianity ruled the nation, that it would be better, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not fear mongering. I mean, how is it fear mongering when you already have somebody, one of the states of the union, proposing that they teach Bible in their classes? So it's like, yeah, it's one of those things. So, and as far as atheism is an empty lie, there's a real way to prove atheism false, and that's just give me a God, a proven God. I guess that would be a good start, but not so much. All right, so that's the impetus of this one, and so I'm going to get right into the video.
Before anything else, 9,
and it only articulates.
Okay, here we go. But I'm going to get into the video. This video features Charlie Kirk. And if you're unfamiliar, he's very much one of those Christian nationalist kind of supporters, the very beliefs in those guys that kind of supports the idea of that the nation was a Christian nation and had a lot to do with the founding of the country. So, but I'm going to kind of let them go loose here for a minute. This is a live reaction, so I'm prepared for some of it. Others of it, I'm just got some very simple comments about it, but let's go.
I was articulated yesterday by a couple of my friends that our country was not founded on Christian principles. So I want to see how, like, an argument that you guys can give me to combat that, because the Declaration only refers to God 4 times and the Constitution doesn't refer to God at all, and it only articulates the structure of government. Is common law Christian in nature, or is it not?
remember that we...
Okay, I want to stop right there. The guy's question is very valid. Number one, the Declaration of Independence doesn't actually refer to a God, it refers to a creator. And that's something that I'm going to note here when Charlie makes his response. The Constitution does not make mention of God at all. And So that's one of that's that's one of the things that's very interesting about this, is that this questioner comes there, and then also the idea of common law being from the Bible is also part of the question. Part of what the guy is looking for is, how do I respond to that? Okay, how do I respond to that? And so Charlie Kirk is going to kind of take over this thing, and he's going to offer up his explanation. So let's see what he has to say first of all.
In nature, or is it not?
Remember that we were a collection of states and colonies, and you need to read the state constitutions before anything else. 9 out of 13 of the original states required you to be a Bible-believing Christian to serve in government.
Okay, I want to stop there. This is true from 1776 till about 1784. The reason those dates are significant is that the Constitution of the United States isn't actually written until 1787, which is 3 years after all of this, what he just said is true. I think that's very significant, because what was happening was you had these state charters from the British government for each of the colonies. and it's one of those things where they had these various things in their constitution. Now, he says 9 out of 13. That is correct. Maryland was probably heavily Catholic in that sense. So it was more of you had to be a Christian to hold public office. Once again, this is 1776 to about 1784, 3 years before the Constitution is even penned. A lot of these were removed. The rest of them were Protestant Christian, notable by their absence, because they all believed they had more of a statement of religious freedom, and they didn't have a litmus test for government officials to be Christians, were our Maine, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Virginia. So those 4 states didn't have any of that. And so that's something that he doesn't really bring out in this little part of this discussion, because he's trying to make a case that, okay, they had this Christian backdrop and that's what formulated the Constitution. The problem is, the Americans win the Revolutionary War in 1783. And then by 1784, a lot of these states had rewritten their state constitutions and taken all of that out. Okay, this is something that Charlie Kirk doesn't really seem to address here. He doesn't go after the idea that a lot of these constitutions changed before the Constitution of the United States is actually written. We were still under the Articles of Confederation. And so he kind of omits that part of the history. He's trying to create this this idea of more of a, shall I say, that this was the Christian backdrop and they had these things in place before when the Constitution was written, when the framers were putting together the Constitution. That's not true. They had discarded all that when they rewrote their state constitutions. And by 1784, almost all the states really didn't have that in there anymore, as far as I can tell. And this is University of Wisconsin stuff that I looked up, so you can look that up for yourself. But it's the litmus test, religious litmus test, was gone by the time all of that happened. It was basically disappeared from almost all these states. In fact, the cry, I think, of the early colonies after they won the war was about religion, was the idea that we wanted religious freedom. So how do we protect that? How do we protect religious freedom? I don't deny that Christianity, a lot of Christians were involved in this process, but I don't think that what Charlie's bringing out here is actually helpful to his case, because they moved away from the Christian litmus test. In fact, in its final form, you can see this in the U.S. Constitution with Article 6, where it says, no religious test shall be given for public office, period, full stop. So the idea of a religious Christian test is eliminated by Article 6 of the Constitution in 1787. So I don't care what all these states had before. I just don't see that that's the case. after, at the time of the founding of the Constitution, they were getting rid of that. So I'm not sure what the relevancy of that point has. So, but let's continue.
At the time of the founding, you could even in actually, 13 out of 13 required a declaration of faith. 9 out of 13 required you to be a Protestant, except Maryland, which was Catholic, which still required a declaration of faith. In almost every single one of the original state constitutions, Pennsylvania included, they had, "I profess Lord and Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior," in the original state constitutions. So you remember, we're a collection of states before that.
Actually, we're a collection of colonies. And what he's referring to is actually these colonial charters that became state constitutions. But pretty much that was gone by the time the Constitution was written. I can't find any evidence. Somebody can give me a link, but I couldn't find any evidence that those things were in place in 1787. It's like, yes, he's actually talking about when these were colonies. That he's not talking, these aren't state constitutions yet. This is colony charters, and he's conflating the two. To me, what he's doing here is he's really not being honest. Yeah. I don't want to go that far yet, Paul. I don't, but it is the problem here, because in 1784, almost all of these states had gotten rid of these litmus tests, these Christian Protestant. This is all part of the colonial times that he's talking about. He's trying to conflate it into this, okay, this is what was going on in the states at the time the Constitution was founded. By the time the Constitution was founded, all these states had rewritten their state constitutions because of the victory in the American Revolution, and they had removed all these litmus tests, okay, these religious litmus tests. They had gotten rid of them, and he doesn't want to mention that, okay? He doesn't want to mention that at all, and I think he's doing this on purpose. One of the things about Kirk is he does have a reputation of so there's that, but I don't see what he's saying. Okay.
Secondly, 55 out of 56 of the original signers of the Declaration were Bible-believing, church-attending Christians.
Citation, please. I wonder who the one outlier was. Is he saying Thomas Jefferson was the only outlier to that? Because Thomas Jefferson was not a Bible-believing Christian. He's famous for the fact that he edited the Bible. Like, he took out all the miracles and stuff he found morally objectionable and got rid of it. So the fact of the matter is, open criticism of the Bible was very common. So you have 56 people sign it. He claims that 55 of them were Bible-believing Christians. I would like a source on that. Is that his opinion? Yeah. This is the one that puzzles me, because Thomas Jefferson and Ben Franklin were both there, and neither one of them were Bible-believing Christians. And so at the best, for me, I think this is a false statistic. I would like to see him back this up with some actual data and research. He just says it. I don't know if Thomas Paine actually signed it, but Thomas Paine was absolutely, in my opinion, an atheist. Okay. And he definitely had some influence on the country. His most famous work, Common Sense, became the basis for the American Revolution in the first place. And his thinking was definitely a part of that. And so I don't know where he's getting this statistic that says 55 out of 56 of the signers were Bible-believing Christians. I don't know how he would prove Bible belief when you have Thomas Jefferson, who literally cut the Bible up. That doesn't really seem to me sound like he believed the Bible that much. I would also ask how Benjamin Franklin, who was definitely there, was a Bible-believing Christian. I guess I would want him to break down all 56 signers and prove to me that 55 of them were Bible believers. I would love to see that. He just states that like it's a fact, and he never backs it up, okay, in this video. And so, so it's kind of, I don't know that necessarily that this is the case. And so he's I don't know. It seems kind of made up. It seems kind of made up to me at that point. I mean,
That's about common law. So common law is
okay.
inherited from Blackstone, who was Christian.
Okay. Common law. Okay. We're going to go into this little discussion in common law because the questioner asked it. Yeah. I have noted that these Christian nationalists do take their cues from apologists and creationists, where they make a lot of statements and they don't bother to back them up with any factual data or anything. We're going to see that they're also fun. Yeah, I think, yeah, I do, but okay, so maybe there was one or two, but a lot of them had changed that. I know the litmus tests for holding public office were gone. Established state religions, I think, were a little bit later after the Constitution was ratified, but I know that the litmus tests for holding office disappeared fairly quickly. So they wanted to get rid of that. So that was that, mostly because it was reaction to the Church of England, because a lot of times these people that hold public office before the revolution was concluded were Church of England people. So there's a lot of, the point is they moved away from it. Okay. Charlie would have a better point if they doubled down on the church litmus test for public service. He would have a better point if all of a sudden all 9 colonies said, hey, now we're states, we're all going to have a state religion. But he doesn't have that. So it's one of those things where I think Charlie fails to understand what was happening in the United States, which was the idea of religious freedom was more important than establishing Christianity, allowing everybody had, a lot of people had come to the United States for religious freedom reasons, and they want, so they want that to be a little bit different. So I just don't see what he's saying here. Now he's going to get into this discussion of common law coming from Blackstone. I would say saying that common law comes from a single individual is a little bit much. And I have some challenges to Christian nationalists on this issue several times. So let's get into the common law part of this video, because I think it's much more interesting what he says here.
Common law is an outgrowth of the scriptures. So let's go to 3 principles of common law: due process and jury of your peers, wrapped into the ultimate biblical principle.
Okay. Due process and jury of your peers. Would somebody show me in the Bible where there's a jury of their peers? Okay. Could somebody tell me where that is? Hey, captive. Can somebody show me in the Bible where you should be tried by a jury of your peers is present? Because I don't remember it. I've read the Bible many, many times. I studied it. I do not remember. He's doing a shot. Cliff and his son. Okay, that's great. But yeah, my problem with that point there, and I want to stop it right there, is due process. What do you mean by due process? Because the Bible doesn't really support that either. I'm still waiting. Yeah, see, this is something that I have believed for a long time as well, Grumpy Librarian, is that common law predates Christianity. The idea of certain ideas, because he's going to say that he's going to make the outrageous statement that the Enlightenment didn't have anything to do with the way the United States was founded. And I just don't see a jury of your peers in the Bible. I don't see due process. If you think stoning somebody after 2 or 3 witnesses says they did a crime worthy of death is due process, I guess if that's your definition of due process, I don't get it. My challenge to Christian nationalists remains: can you show me these supposed principles of due process and common law in your Bible? Because I don't see it. Okay. And I've studied the Bible a lot. I read it a lot when I was a believer. I was a pastor. I read the thing over and over again. And I'm sorry, I think this right here is more correct. There's a lot of common law principles that predate the Christian scriptures, predate Christianity or even Judaism being very popular. There's just, I don't see that. Where is he getting this from? He says that these are in the scriptures, and he's going to say several things are in the scriptures, but I want to know chapter and verse references of where he's getting it from. I just don't see it. Okay. And so, yeah, he says that this is due process and that comes from the Bible. I don't see it given to me. So, and it's that kind of thing.
That you shall not favor justice if you are rich or poor, which is in Leviticus 19, right?
Yes, Leviticus 19 does say that, but he wants to avoid a lot of the inequalities of the Bible because let's go on just a little bit.
Before, most famous part of Leviticus 19, which is that you should love your neighbor as yourself. But before that is that in the administration of justice, you shall not favor the rich or the poor, which is the idea of blind justice. We get that in the West, which is incorporated also in the New Testament ideal, neither slave nor Greek nor Jew, you're all one in Jesus Christ, which we get the idea of human equality. These are
Whoa. Okay. You said a mouthful there, and I want to deal with it, and it's just over the top stupid. Okay. He sits there and yes, Leviticus 19 does talk about not favoring the rich over the poor, or that sort of thing. But the Old Testament certainly also has favoritism in it, because there's certainly this idea, especially within it, of, masters have authority over their slaves, for instance, is a big one. How do you have a book say that it's about equality when it openly not only protects slavery, but endorses it? Okay. I'm assuming Kirk is a Bible-believing Christian, so let's run with that assumption then. He's quoting Romans where, Paul says there's neither Jew nor Greek. Everybody's the same in Christ. If he believes then that First Timothy is also written by Paul, then what does he do with slaves be obedient to your masters as to Christ? Okay, I don't get how he can see, once again, would you people that claim that the Bible is the origin of equality, please prove it using the Bible? Because if all you got is Romans, Paul is also very clear that slaves are still subservient to their masters. He's very clear. His definition of equality is very limited to salvation and salvation alone. He doesn't back up a social equality. The idea that somehow Paul in that statement is backing up social equality is contradicted by Paul, okay? Because Paul talks about being subservient to the government and being subservient to authorities. And, he doesn't talk about justice, whether the authority is giving out justice or not doesn't matter. I mean, Romans 13 makes that very, very clear that you're still supposed to be subservient to the government. It's one of those things where I don't know where Christians get that this is the basis for common law. Because if I look at the Bible and try to find common law, it contradicts common law too much all the time. And so once again, Kirk is just saying a bunch of stuff, and he's counting on his audience being gullible enough not to check him. So, and that's kind of the way he operates. Yeah, we'll talk about that later, but let's move on.
All biblical ideas, they're not Enlightenment ideas, which is they
that's where it is. They're not Enlightenment ideas. That is a straight up bold-faced lie. Okay. I want to know where the separation of powers comes from in the Bible, because that's an Enlightenment thinker. That's Montesquieu, okay, is the Enlightenment thinker that came up with the idea of separation of powers. And James Madison loved the guy. Thomas Jefferson definitely was a framer of the Constitution and wrote the Declaration of Independence. His idea of natural rights of life, liberty, pursuit, happiness in the Declaration of Independence, and some of the things that he advocated for in the Bill of Rights later, that's all John Locke. Okay. And then Rousseau is definitely an influence on the founding fathers when it came to the idea of a social contract with government, that this whole thing I'm trying to not to be rude here, but that's just when he makes the statement that the Enlightenment had nothing to do with it. That is absolutely the most full of shit statement I've heard any Christian nationalist absolutely make. I mean, I'm sitting here saying, yeah, the Enlightenment had a lot to do with it, and I don't deny that Christianity was part of the background of the founding of the nation. But yeah, it's like for him to make the statement that the Enlightenment had nothing to do with it. Where is separation of powers in the Bible? Where are natural rights in the Bible? Where is the idea of a social contract in the Bible? It doesn't exist. Okay, the Old Testament is completely about the authority of God and everybody forcing that. Okay, so it's that. Yeah, exactly. He's telling his audience what he wants to hear, and yes, it does support slavery and genocide, no matter how much they twist and dance. And I've made that point several times. Yeah, it's a claim without evidence. Okay, I'm sorry. The very account of God in the Old Testament definitely shows him as an evil person. So there's that. I don't, if there's equality, why is there slavery in the Bible? If there's this notion of trial by peers, where is that? Okay, the idea of jury trial is not a biblical idea. It doesn't exist in the Bible. I challenge you to find it. Okay, he's just saying shit and expecting. So I evil is more than bad things happening. It's when people perpetrate evil on each other, and God allows it. So, but I just don't see what Charlie Kirk is talking about here in the Bible. He's making claims that the Bible is the origin of this. And I would want him to back that up with a more detailed conversation, but he doesn't do that. So he just keeps moving on. And we're going to move on.
Conflated at the time. But more importantly than that, they say that God was only mentioned 4 times in the Declaration of Independence. Well, that's a big deal. Okay. Laws of nature and nature's God. The last paragraph of the Declaration reads as a prayer. It says, we appeal to the supreme judge of the universe. Who's the judge of the universe? Jesus Christ. As it says in Revelation, that Jesus will judge.
Okay, so we're going to bring in the Bible and connect it with the Declaration of Independence, even though the Declaration of Independence doesn't do that. That's his Christian assumption. Okay. The Declaration of Independence mentions a creator 4 times. Okay. And it does say we appeal to the judge of the universe. But we need to remember who's writing these words and who really was the impetus behind that. That's Thomas Jefferson. And Thomas Jefferson was not a Bible believing Christian. He would not have assumed that when he wrote those words, we appeal to the judge, that he was actually praying. First of all, I think that's a conjecture. It's more, you got to remember the Declaration of Independence was a statement to King George III. And so they're basically saying, we appeal to a higher authority than you. Okay. It's the thing about the Declaration of Independence, as a grumpy librarian just pointed out, all the Declaration of Independence does is declare that we're independent. It has no basis in law. It's not the basis of our laws. Okay. It forms a lot of understanding of the ideology of people that framed the Constitution later, but it has nothing to do with how we do business. Okay. If anything, maybe the line life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness is a good basic statement of human rights, but that's not in the Bible either. Okay. How can a slave have the right to life when you have rules that the only time that a slave gets any kind of justice is if he's literally beat to death? Okay. How do you say that a slave has the right to pursue their happiness and has a right to liberty when they don't? Okay. That's an Enlightenment idea. I mean, the thing with the Declaration of Independence, it's this great statement of Enlightenment ideas. The creator is done on purpose because Thomas Jefferson is a deist. He did not believe in Yahweh as the creator. I'm sorry. There's it's not a basis for law. Okay. It's just, it's, I don't get where he gets that this is a connection, because he immediately jumps to Revelation to say that that's what that means, but he offers no justification of how Thomas Jefferson and the committee that wrote the Declaration of Independence, that's what they would have meant. He doesn't do that. He just says it. Okay. He's doing what apologists and creationists do all the time. And now we have Christian nationalists also doing it. They make a lot of assertions, but they never back them up. And this is one of those cases where he's just talking out his ass at this point. Okay. He's making connections that don't exist. Okay. And the Declaration, as Grumpy Librarian points out, the Declaration of Independence isn't about common law. Okay. It's about the issue of declaring ourselves free from our original, people that controlled us, which is, Great Britain. Okay. And His Majesty's King George III. Okay. It was about saying we are declaring ourselves independent. It has no basis in how we do business. Okay. It really isn't about that at all. But so there's that. So, but this is, I don't know. Kirk is kind of just making stuff up at this point, but let's keep going.
The earth on his throne. So in the Declaration, they were praying to Christ our Lord as a prayer very specifically. Thirdly,
how is it very specific? There's no mention of Jesus Christ at the end of the Declaration of Independence. How do you say that it's very specific when it's all based on your conjecture that the statement in Revelation is connected with the end of the Declaration of Independence? You've not done anything to prove that that's true. You just stated that it's true, and the gullibility of your audience is playing into it because that's what they want to believe. Okay, but it does not say that at the end of the Declaration of Independence that this is about Jesus Christ on his throne. That is all conjecture by Mr. Kirk here. He is absolutely adding that in without any justification. Okay, he just wants it to be true.
I said on stage yesterday, Deuteronomy was by far the most quoted book, religious or non-religious, in the time of the founding when they were putting together the Constitution, more than John Locke, more than Montesquieu, more than Blackstone.
So you do admit that John Locke, Montesquieu, and all the rest of them are in the discussion, but you just said the Enlightenment didn't have anything to do with it. But now you're actually admitting that those guys did have something to do with it. You're admitting that they were indeed quoted, because they were. Okay. Blackstone, all the rest of them. Let's understand, I don't really care that the Bible is quoted. The question is whether or not the Bible is accurate in its portrayal of reality. Okay. Yes, they're openly admitted that there is this Christian background, but this puzzles me that why Deuteronomy would be the most quoted book if it's a Christian nation. Why aren't they quoting the New Testament? Why are they quoting the Old Testament so much? Okay, maybe because there was this common belief that the law of God was some sort of thing that everything was based on, but I'm not really sure. So it's like, on what basis does the fact that they quote this book so much form the basis for the Constitution? Because the end result is a Constitution that is basically godless. Okay, for the first time in history, the Constitution of a nation has a godless tone to it. There's no mention of God at all. We go back to the original guy's question. He makes mention of this fact. And so far, you keep talking about the Declaration of Independence, but you're making no direct reference to the Constitution because you can't. Because there is no mention of a creator or God or anything like that in the Constitution of the United States, which is done in 1787. So I don't know where he's getting this, but let's continue.
The book of Deuteronomy, which talked about laws, customs, traditions. It was Moses' farewell address as he's about to say goodbye, say, hey, good luck in Canaan, guys. Here's how you should set up your form of government. But finally, and most importantly, let's look at actually what the founders said. John Adams famously said the Constitution was only written for a moral and religious people. It was wholly inadequate for the people of any other. The body politic of America was so Christian and was so Protestant that our form and structure of government was built for the people that believed in Christ our Lord.
Oh, that's No. Okay. I'm sorry. The separation of powers, that's Montesquieu. Okay. There's nothing about separation of powers in the Bible or Christianity. Christianity has always had a tendency to be very episcopal and heavy handed, always with this single religious leader guiding and doing it. You're quoting Deuteronomy where supposedly Moses wrote it, which he couldn't have. And Moses didn't even exist as far as we can tell. Okay. So if that's true, then they're still basing it. I don't get this. I don't get how you say that, because just because Deuteronomy is quoted a lot doesn't mean that it's quoting any of that stuff. The Exodus never happened. None of that ever happened. The conquest of Canaan is largely mythological, despite many other people saying that it's not. There's no archaeological historical evidence for Joshua backwards. Okay. I don't think it, I don't get, so you're saying, oh, well, they didn't know that. They didn't know it was mythological. And I'm sorry, even if they don't quote Montesquieu and they don't quote Locke, he certainly was the basis for the ideas that they used. And, separation of powers, natural rights comes out in the Bill of Rights later. The idea that the Enlightenment didn't have anything to do with what he stated earlier, that's just not true. Okay. The United States didn't exist at the time of the Mayflower Compact. The Mayflower Compact also isn't the only compact. It's just the first one. Sorry, but the United States doesn't exist under its current constitution until 1787. This is 100 some years. So what? Okay, I only have to say to that. So what? Okay, that's not why they founded the nation at the time in 1787. It's not always built by Christians. There were many other people that came. Rhode Island was a place of religious freedom, so much so that Jews established a settlement there. Okay. This idea that somehow just because they were the first, that means everything was based on Christianity. That's a load of crap, dude. That's bad thinking. Okay. It's just bad thinking. It's not proof of anything. It's not. The United States did not exist in 1620. Okay. It did not exist. Okay. No, not necessarily, dude. They didn't make it. Okay. There are tons of people that came for different reasons. The Jews came here. They certainly weren't Christians. Catholics, dude, I'm not trying to be rude here, but a lot of time has passed between the Mayflower Compact and the Constitution of the United States. Ideology has moved on. It doesn't prove that they started it or made it. Okay. And they're certainly not making it now. They're not completely responsible for everything now. So what difference does that make? That's really lousy thinking to say, oh, because somebody did this first in 1620, that makes it a Christian nation. That's a load of shit. That's really lousy thinking. Okay. What something becomes is a product of a lot of things, and a lot of things weaving together. Also, I would say the Native Americans were here and they had a basis for what they were doing, and I don't think it was Christian. Okay. So the United States comes, I'm not denying that Christianity was around and it formed a backdrop. What I'm saying is, when you get to the forming of the Constitution, where is Christianity in it? Okay, when you eliminate a religious litmus test in Article 6, and 2 years later, you write the First Amendment that says you can't establish a religion, you can't restrict its freedom, that's not saying Christianity. Okay, it says religion, not Christianity. Okay, the Christians didn't make this nation. Okay, it was made by a lot of people of a lot of different viewpoints. To say that it's all monolithically Christian, that's just very narrow-minded thinking. Your name is intelligent atheism. I think you might want to go back and think about the intelligent part, because you're not really thinking through the idea that, okay, just because somebody started the Mayflower Compact in 1620, then that suddenly that's all Christian for the next 300 years. Come on, man. That's not even good thing. That's not even good thinking. You need to really rethink that. Yeah, I mean, you could say that Jamestown was a better start to. That's a specific sex story, one of many. There's Jamestown. There was no religious connotations to Jamestown. It was much more about the English crown doing things. If we really want to argue who started the United States, we could make a better argument because of the political power that the UK, United Kingdom at the time, created the United States. Okay, it was more of a political creation than a Christian one. Okay, that's just not very, it's not very good thinking to say that because one group of sector Christians settled here and created the Mayflower Compact, that somehow that makes the whole thing Christian. How does that work? Okay, are you saying other people with different ideologies didn't come here and build stuff? Are you saying that other people with different ideologies didn't come here and do things? I mean, that's not very good thinking. Okay, I'm sorry, it just isn't. And you're showing the same kind of thinking that Kirk is. You know, he's thinking that, you know, just because they quoted Deuteronomy a lot, so what? Okay, that doesn't mean that it was the basis for what the Constitution. I would like to see these Christian nationalist apologist types actually demonstrate to me biblical verses that became part of the Constitution. Show me that. Okay. But they never do it. They just assert it.
One of the reasons we're living through a constitutional crisis is that we no longer have a Christian nation, but we have a Christian form of government, and they're incompatible. So you cannot have liberty if you do not.
How is our form of government Christian when it doesn't even mention Christianity? The Constitution doesn't even mention God. Okay, how is that a Christian government? A Christian government, every Christian government I know of from history has no problem mentioning that it's Christian. Okay, you even went back to the original state colony charters and talked about the litmus test that they had for public office being Protestant Christian. Why did they move away from that? Why did they depart from that and go to something else? Okay, you know, so what? That kind of thing happened or was the case. The fact is they moved away from it. All the states moved away from it. The United States moved away from it. Article 6 says you can't give a religious litmus test. So they moved away. You can't, there's no requirement to be a Christian anymore. So how does that make it a Christian constitution and a Christian government? I do not understand the reasoning here where you say, oh, we have a constitutional crisis. There is no constitutional crisis. On what basis do you say there's a constitutional crisis? Okay, the only things that I see causing a constitutional crisis is we have a bunch of Christians that want to impose their Christian worldview on the rest of us. And somehow we're not allowed to object because this supposedly was a Christian government. Where is that in the Constitution itself? There's no reference to God. There's no reference to Christianity. There's a lot of separation of powers, which is Montesquieu. There's a lot of natural rights, which is Locke. Yes, actually, that I do believe the Plymouth Brethren did say that. They did say that trial by jury was not present in the Bible. The funny thing about the Puritans is they threw off a lot of American traditions because they weren't in the Bible. They didn't. They were the only, as far as I know, the only people to actually ban Christmas in the United States were the Puritans because it was a pagan holiday. So, yeah, it's like what Kirk is doing here is he's saying, oh, this is a Christian doctrine. The reason we have this constitutional crisis is because we have a Christian government and we're no longer a Christian nation. And it's like, no, quite probably the opposite is true. We don't have a Christian government, and now Christianity is trying to make it a Christian government. And, you know, I hate to bring up facts here, but it's like, because Kirk doesn't seem to like them, the fact that the Constitution, the actual beginning of our law, the foundation of our law, the end discussion, what the Supreme Court addresses in our legal system, doesn't have any mention of God in it, doesn't allow you to pick people because of religiosity, who has the First Amendment, and it says you can't establish a religion. Congress can't establish a religion, and they can't forbid the free exercise thereof. I'm all for both. How is that Christian? How is separation of powers Christian? How is trial by jury Christian? Show me in the Bible where these things exist. Okay, because I've read the Bible a gazillion times. I don't know, I'm being hyperbolic, but I made a point to read the Bible every year when I was a pastor. I made a point. I don't remember any of these things in the Bible. And you can say they quoted Deuteronomy. What exactly did they quote in Deuteronomy that you are saying is the foundation for this Constitution? Because I don't see it. Okay. Just because they quoted a lot doesn't mean they were rightly applying it. And it doesn't mean I don't get it. How in the hell do you say that the Constitution is a Christian government when it doesn't even mention Christ? How do you say that? Okay, you're making that up, Kirk. You're just making it
Have a
up.
Christian population. So that's just a surface level belief. So then they'll go to the First Amendment, which has two parts of the First Amendment which get conflated. First of all, separation of church and state is not in the U.S. Constitution. That is a single letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote in 1807 to the Danbury Baptist Convention in Massachusetts, assuring them that the government would not come after the church.
Exactly. Okay, and I don't deny that part. Okay, separation of church and state isn't in the Constitution. Agreed, and it is part of a lever of Thomas Jefferson. But Thomas Jefferson was indeed trying to say, listen, we're going to allow religious freedom here. We're not coming after you. Why would that have been a concern of the Baptist Church reading the Constitution if it's a Christian government document? Why would that be a concern of theirs if it's a Christian government? Because the church recognized it wasn't a Christian government at the time. They realized it was a secular government, and that for the first time in history of Christianity, they didn't have privilege in this country, that they didn't have some sort of, my religion gets to sit in political seats of power. They were concerned about that, and Thomas Jefferson assured them they were not, the government wasn't going to come after them. The new government wasn't going to come after them. But let's look at that, because he's going to, let's let him go for just a little bit farther.
Okay, which is the opposite of what they would say. However, that was then resurrected by the Warren Court and the Burger Court in the 60s, where they said, hey, all of a sudden, we're now going to make this as if it's the Constitution. It does say in the Constitution two things, which is the Establishment Clause and the Free Expression Clause. The Establishment Clause is that Congress shall make no law prohibiting the free exercise thereof.
And he misquotes the First Amendment right there. Just so everybody gets it right, it's Congress shall not make any law establishing a religion, period. Okay, and then it says, nor shall it pass a law that will restrict the free exercise thereof. It's a two-edged sword. It's saying, listen, we're not going to have a state religion in the United States. It's very clear. So does that get us still to the concept of separation of church and state? Absolutely. The First Amendment absolutely does that. Okay, it gets us to a point where, and as a Christian, I used to argue with my fellow Christian nationalist believers that was in our best interest. The fact that we couldn't have a country that was completely religiously neutral was to our benefit, because then some other religion couldn't get in there. Like, let's say Islam becomes popular in the United States. They decide to take over the government and they say, okay, we're going to teach the Quran. We're going to do all this stuff. The First Amendment prevents them from doing that. And every Christian in the room that I would talk to back when I was a Christian would say, yeah, I agree with that. That protects us. It also means that as a consequence, I can't do that either as a Christian. Now, as an atheist, I'm sorry, the First Amendment, whether it's separation of church and state is in the Constitution, is irrelevant to me. The principle is there in the first two lines of the First Amendment. We're going to keep religion out. We're not going to establish a religion as the state religion. And we're also not going to let all you religious types, you're not going to be restricted in your freedom. Once again, I go back to, yes, Thomas Jefferson was writing the Baptists, trying to assure them that the new government wasn't going to come after them because it was a secular government. And Kirk completely misses this point of why Thomas Jefferson was writing, because they were concerned that this new secular government was going to come after the church. And he's trying to say, no, the way the Bill of Rights is written, you're going to be safe. Okay. You can freely express whatever religion you want it. It's really a protection of all religion against other religions. Okay. Drinkwater, you have the right not to be Islamic because of the First Amendment. Nobody Islamic can force you to be Islamic, okay, because of the First Amendment. Okay, it's your freedom to not follow certain religions that is also protected. You don't have that in a state religion, because then the only religion that's protected is the one that's the state religion. Okay, so I don't know what he's talking about either, honestly, but the issue is the separation of church and state is definitely there on the First Amendment, whether or not it's in the Constitution or not, because the principle is still there. We got to remember Thomas Jefferson is the guy that wanted a Bill of Rights. And he actually made a deal in 1787 to make sure that 2 years later they were coming back and establish a Bill of Rights. And one of the things that he was definitely an architect on and definitely part of the process on is the First Amendment. And his whole thing was, hey, we're not coming after religion. We're just saying we want religion out of our government so that it can be religiously neutral. And a lot of Christians back then went along with this because it protected their religious freedom. They didn't want, if they were a Protestant, they didn't want the Catholics to suddenly become the state religion, and then Protestantism becomes something that's persecuted, or vice versa. Religious freedom was a big thing in this early colonial period because of so many people that came here for religious, reasons. Okay, that's why they do that. Okay, you have the freedom to not be certain religions because there is no state religion. And the problem with Christian nationalism is they're trying to turn this on the head and say, oh, it's a Christian nation and therefore we can do whatever we want to other things. They are absolutely trying to take power. And if history has told us anything, if it's told us anything, that religion, when it gets political power, is dangerous. It doesn't matter what religion it is. And our Constitution protects us from that with the First Amendment. We're not going to establish a religion, any kind of religion, with any laws that we make, and we're not going to forbid you from being whatever religion you want to be. And that is a freedom from other religions. As a Christian, if you're a Christian listening to this, that protects your right to stay a Christian. Okay, no Islamic person, no Jewish person, no Hindu person, no Buddhist person can come along, as if some of those religions would do this, and say, no, you have to be a Buddhist now. That protects your right. And as a Christian, I used to argue with my Christian national, you are heading the wrong direction because you're opening the door for us to be persecuted again. Because if the wrong religion gets in charge and it's not Christianity, you're going to have a trouble. Okay. But Christians always have this desire to have power and control because that's just the way their religion is set up. It's very autocratic, and they're trying to put autocratics into democracy, which just doesn't work.
What they were most worried about was a Presbyterian or a Anglican or a Quaker type religion taking over the federal government. Instead, it was that there is not going to be a state-run religion or a state-run government. Did you know that one of the first acts of Congress was taxpayer-funded Bible printing and distribution?
Yep, true story. And later on, it was challenged, and similar things were challenged. And guess what? They stopped doing that for the very reason of the First Amendment. All of those things began to stop. Over time, the state funding of religious institutions has been shot down over and over and over and over again, right from the beginning. Yes, it was one of the first actions, but it's also was challenged. And later on, it stopped. Okay, because of the First Amendment. Okay, you're establishing a religion. You can't do that. And so it's like he knows that he's telling this story, but he also knows the end result of the story, and he's going to leave that out. So,
did you know that there were church services held in the Supreme Court building as late as the Jackson presidency in the 1820s? But going.
So what? Okay, a lot of public buildings can be used for other purposes. That's been, you rent them out just like you get an appointment. That doesn't prove that anything is Christian. It just proves that a building can be rented out. Okay, just because church service, the Supreme Court building may have been one of the few buildings in town at the time, for all you know, or that's worthy of a place where you can have a religious service. I don't really have a problem with this, but it doesn't prove anything about the nature of the nation. It just proves that a building was used for a certain purpose, and that's all it proves.
Back to this idea of separation of church and state, and again, I could riff on this ad nauseum because it's just so ridiculous, right? Is that
why is it ridiculous? Okay, it's a good principle to protect your Christianity, because if somebody else gets yeah, this is also true. I forgot about that part. Thanks, Grumpy. But yes, Jackson was a very bad example. He defied the SCOTUS on a regular basis, and so I think there was actually a fight about whether these religious services could even be there. Okay, so Jackson is not a great example of somebody who was good for founding principles. He's one of those presidents that openly defied the Supreme Court, openly defied Congress at times. So I don't know if he's the greatest example Kirk wants to use there. That's correct. But so what? Why is it a ridiculous concept? Because it protects you, Kirk. It protects you being allowed to be whatever brand of Christianity you want, and nobody else, no other, you're sitting here talking about the different brands of Christianity, but that's not what the First Amendment says. It doesn't say Christianity. It says religion. Okay, any religion, all religions. Congress cannot establish any of them. Okay, they can't pass laws that favor them. Okay, and they can't stop you from, you are free to be whatever religion you want to be for the same reasons. Okay, the idea of separation of church and state is what keeps that true. Yes, Jackson was the 7th president of the United States. He was also very openly anti-Native American, and he's the one that kind of rode the wave of like the second great awakening of Christianity in the United States, and kind of he took that and rode with it. The problem was he was like one of the worst examples of Christians you could ever have. Okay, he's sounds familiar. Yeah, sounds familiar. But anyway, it's not a ridiculous notion. The First Amendment, whether it says that notion or not, clearly says you can't establish any religion. It's not about the different sects of Christianity like Kirk is implying in this last statement. It's about all of it. Okay. I don't get it. Okay. He wants to say this is ridiculous, and it's the very thing that protects him being able to say the nonsense that he says. Okay. And he just he shows a real lack of understanding of how important separation of church and state is for religious freedom. Okay, because the moment the state becomes one certain religion, any religion, including Christianity overall, it's going to be a problem. And if he says, oh, it's a Christian nation, well, which brand? Okay, which denomination? Which one? Because I'm going to tell you, if you pick one, then bam, all the rest of them are going to object. Okay, it wasn't just about not having Quakers or Protestants or whatever in public office. It was about having religious people out of that this is not about religion when it comes to public office. Okay, and it's not about, I don't get why he thinks it's a ridiculous notion. He only thinks it's ridiculous because he wants to push his Christian agenda on the country, and that's just, it's wrong for him to openly, blatantly state something that actually protects him. He's attacking. So it's kind of weird.
It's not biblical because first, it's not biblical. It's not constitutional because you go a layer deeper. People that even say that, do you believe in separation of morality and state?
What does religion and morality have to do with each other? Okay, I know that religions have moral systems, but this is, okay, he's already going into the typical trope is you can't be moral unless you're religious. And it's like, no, there's plenty of moral systems that don't require religion. So I don't understand this notion that he has here. He's going to go into this whole morality thing, and I'm going to let him ramble for a little bit here.
Nobody does. So all laws are a reflection of morality, and all morality comes from somewhere. There is no such thing as neutral morality. And we believe what the founders believed because they put it in the halls of Congress, they put it in the Supreme Court, and they put it all throughout the country, which is that the Decalogue, the 10 Commandments, is the core morality of how a society and a civilization should exist, right?
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with you that there is no such thing as neutral morality. I don't even know why that's even a discussion, because I don't know too many moral philosophies that talk about their morality being neutral. Okay. It has to come from somewhere, right? But you're making the case that it came from the Decalogue. Oh man, I got to redo my video on the 10 Commandments. I did one a long time ago when this channel first started out, and I probably should redo it. It's not a good basis for morality, and most of it is pretty common knowledge. I mean, thou shalt not murder. Yes, they didn't know it was wrong to kill people before they got to Mount Sinai. They didn't know it was wrong to steal from people before they got to Mount Sinai. Okay, they didn't. I don't get it. I don't understand how the Decalogue is a good standard of morality. I never have. I don't get it. So here's the issue, and they believe, and he openly says that he believes it's the 10 Commandments that's the basis of morality. And I would challenge that. Just because you believe it doesn't mean it was the basis for the Constitution. And as many people have pointed out in the comments in this video, common law predates Christianity. It predates a lot of things. The idea of trial by jury is probably an older English concept that goes way back even to pagan times. So the idea that somehow these common laws were derivative, I challenge any Christian to please show me that in the Bible. Okay, please show me in the Bible where there's a trial by jury. Show me a statement of a Bill of Rights, of human rights. Show me natural law. Show me separation of powers. These are all Enlightenment ideas that came from Enlightenment thinkers that the founding fathers did absolutely utilize. And his statement early on, and now he wants to sit there and say all morality has to be based on belief in God. It's a Christian apologetical trope, and it's just not true. Okay, it's just not true. I just don't see it. So it's the Decalogue, it's the 10 Commandments. So, we're going to justify putting up the 10 Commandments in every courthouse. So he's definitely playing a political angle there that he wants to support.
The 10 Commandments of every person. And finally, and this is the kicker, if the founding fathers were not Bible-believing church-saying Christians, why did they put Leviticus on the Liberty Bell? Not John, not Psalms, not Proverbs, not Genesis, Leviticus.
Okay. But doesn't that kind of counter your point though? Because if it was truly a Bible believing Christian, why didn't they put a New Testament quote on it? Okay. And I would argue that they only used this quote. And were they really the one that commissioned the Liberty Bell? I don't think they were. Okay. I think he's revising history here. And so what? They put a Bible quote on a bell. How is that the kicker? How is that the big one? Okay. I don't so I don't get it. So it appears on a Liberty Bell. How is that the kicker? How is that the most significant evidence? If they weren't Bible believing Christians, well, if they were Christians, why didn't they work harder to get a New Testament quote on it? Okay. Why didn't they, it's like, and yes, it talks about liberty because it's one of the few Bible verses that actually uses the word. Okay. I don't get that part. I just don't get it. So you can say it now you're a Christian, Grumpy. Yeah, I guess that's the way the logic works here. I don't understand the logic here. That somehow this is the kicker. If they weren't Bible believing, it's on the Liberty Bell. I don't remember who the Liberty Bell was commissioned by. Was it commissioned by the government or did some individual do it? Actually, God claimed, excuse me, is it not Paul who says that he's a bond slave of God, of Jesus Christ? How is there not slavery with God? God demands that his subjects be bond slaves of his. It demands that they be his slaves and his servants. in a very king slave mastery stuff. Sorry, the Bible is full of references to slavery as a good thing, and it includes their relationship with God. Yeah, and that's it. But then the same guy who supposedly writes Galatians, Asho's very good at bringing up the verse, but it's the same guy who says slaves be obedient to your masters. If this is true, it has no social ramifications for Paul. He gets rid of it. Okay, he dumps it. Okay, when it comes to, people bring up Onesimus, it never says that Onesimus was ever supposed to be stopped being a slave. Paul never instructs, tell the guy he doesn't have to be a slave anymore in Philemon. It doesn't say that. Okay, but so what? This is one verse. Okay, when Paul talks about slave-master relationships, and when he refers to himself, he calls himself a bond slave of Jesus Christ, which means he's using slavery language, okay, to describe his relationship and declaring it to be a good thing. Okay. I'm sorry, Paul is not your best example. In this verse, I would basically come up to Paul if I was there and say, dude, you're being a hypocrite. Okay, if this is true, then why is there slavery? Why does he endorse it? Why does he back it up? Okay, I don't know. Okay, so it's not okay, so the Liberty Bell isn't even a Revolutionary War thing. It's not even a constitutional thing. It's not even something that Congress did. Kirk is absolutely playing on the ignorance of his flipping audience with this one. This is the kicker? No doubt that a bunch, they quote, I don't get it. I don't get it. Okay, so you're using the Liberty Bell, even though it wasn't even made at the time that the United States even existed. And it would have had to have been cast with that quote on it ahead of time. Okay. Okay. And it's a gift forged in England, the country we threw off in the revolution, and commissioned by France. Okay, it's not even the product of Christianity, and Kirk is using this. Oh my God. So, yeah, no kidding, and that's why it needs to be gotten rid of this time. So what? I'm sorry. So what? Okay, I'm trying to get your point. Okay. Yes, even the founding fathers had slaves, but eventually the Constitution kicked its ass, and it had to. There was too many prisons. So I don't know. What we see here with Kirk here is he's telling an absolute bold-faced lie by omission, because he's sitting there not telling what the origin of the Liberty Bell is, but then he said, oh, they put a quote of the Bible on it. So what? Okay, if it's not actually commissioned by the Continental Congress, doesn't matter, does it? If the bell is forged in England, okay, and commissioned by France, it had nothing to do with the founding of the United States. But he's leaving that all out on purpose. That's hilarious. Okay, yeah, okay, I think we can come to this conclusion. Fred Harvey is just another liar for Christ. Okay, he's lying. Okay, and it's sad. It's really sad.
Americans can't spell Leviticus. Leviticus 25:19, proclaim liberty throughout the land of which you are in. It is one of the most sinister, most unsubstantiated lies that does not come up against any sort of academic scrutiny. This idea that founding fathers were a bunch of Enlightenment common law deists. The reason they hate it is because the reason they must say this is that if we actually go back to our Christian roots and we go back to where we once were, it's America's best hope for revival and for a great future.
Where we once were. So you want to reestablish slavery in the United States based on Christian principles. But he makes a statement that it has no place in scholarship. Then I would ask, why so many universities talk and so many books have been written and so many academic books have been written about the connection between Enlightenment thinkers like Locke, Montesquieu, Rousseau, and the Constitution, and showing and demonstrating how those things are connected. How do you make such a bald-faced lying statement? I do not know. Okay, I just don't know. I don't understand that. So on what basis? This is kind of the end of the video. So I Kirk. I don't know what to do with him because it's so yeah, so that's an instilling of the idea. But when you talk about the morality of slavery, has it always been wrong or right? Are you saying then that at one point slavery was morally okay and now it's not? I would say no. Okay. Somehow it's a process of one. Here's the thing. Okay. And this is the real thing that really bothers me about this video, is he tells the bold-faced lie that the Enlightenment had nothing to do with the founding of the country and that it's all about Christianity. I want to know where separation of powers comes from in Christianity. I want to know where natural rights based on natural law come from in Christianity. I want to know where the idea of a social contract comes from in Christianity. I want to know why then all these state constitutions moved away from a religious litmus test. And in the end product in 1787, the framers say there shall be no religious litmus test given. And then later, 2 years later, when they write the Bill of Rights, they say Congress can't establish a state religion and they can't interfere with people's religion. If it's founded on Christian principles, where is the Christianity in the Constitution? That's what I want to know. Can you demonstrate me from my perspective, sir, it's always been morally wrong. Even when people practice it, they had guilt about it. Okay. The concept of some person owning another person is just a bullshit concept. And they had to enforce it with force, which shows you how good it is. But, granted, if you want to say Christianity is some basis for some of the things that happened in the United States, yeah, it was certainly used for justification of slavery and chattel slavery. Southern preachers were well known for preaching a lot of things. This is the other thing. Grumpy Librarian, you've been spot on tonight. Thank you very much. Appreciate your input to this discussion. But yes, how do you get democracy from a theocracy? Okay, how do you get that? Locke does spend a great deal of time arguing against the divine right of kings. He gets rid of the whole divine right concept, okay, and he dumps it, okay, in trash. Okay, he trashes it. Democracies predate Christianity. Okay, the ideas of democracy don't appear in the Bible. It's not there. Okay, it just isn't there. Okay, it's not there. With the women making chamois in the kitchen for men folk, yeah, I guess as so. But no, this is the most salient point I want to make here. Where is democracy in the Bible? Where is it? Whenever Christianity established its government, up until you don't get this until the Reformation, the idea of democratic Presbyterian or congregational government doesn't exist. Okay, it's all Episcopal, okay, which is ruled by on high, from God to his servants to the people. Okay, this whole notion of democracy predates Christianity by quite a bit. Okay, you had the Athenian city-state was a democratic state. You had the Republic of Rome, okay, which was a republican form of government. These things were also things that the founding fathers drew from. In fact, one of their things about the Republic of Rome is they had made a mistake by not having a constitution. It was all tradition, and tradition erodes, and they didn't want what their principles were to be eroded. Where? Name me a Bible verse that gives this credence. I'm sorry, Christians have notoriously been unloving to me. I literally have people coming here that say that I'm an atheist, that therefore I don't have any morality. Sorry, dude. I'm not trying to be rude to you, but you're so wrong about this. Okay. There is no principle in the Constitution that's backed up by any biblical verse I know of. Okay. I can't find it. All right. I'm sorry, that just doesn't exist. I don't see it. They designed the Constitution the way they did to keep religion out of it because they knew the dangers of religion and government being in bed together. Christianity preaches love. There's an old pagan saying, by the way, about Christians to kind of deal with freedom and democracy doesn't come from Christians. In fact, democracy existed. You had various things like I know a little bit of Viking history to know that Vikings had a very democratic, when they gathered in certain situations, it was very democratic. So democracy is not a Christian thing. It's a human thing. Okay. There have been democratic governments throughout history. Unless you don't believe in the same God that I do. Okay. Then we're allowed to kill you. And we're allowed to kill your kids and your women and your children and everybody. And we'll take your girls as sex slaves. Yeah. Okay. That's the Bible that Christians believe in. Okay. As far as freedom goes, liberty is an enlightened concept. It's a natural rights concept from Locke. Okay. Locke was the one who came up with the idea of liberty being extended to everybody. Okay. And so the idea that comes from Christianity, you better do better than just say so. You better come with some evidence. Or God is an awful parent. If God exists, he is an awful parent. But no, the idea of liberty doesn't come from the Bible, and it certainly doesn't come from Christianity. The Mayflower Compact has nothing to do with the Constitution. It has nothing to do with it. Sorry, the U.S. didn't start until 1787 in its current form. That's literally 150 years later. You seem to have a problem understanding that in the time in between, a lot of things happened. Okay. And it's not the Christian life. You would not want to live the Puritan lifestyle, by the way, under the Mayflower Compact. You would not want to live that. Okay. Trust me, you wouldn't. Okay. So, yep. True. Pirates were much more democratic. So there was, tons of democracy inside, outside. It's not a Christian concept. Freedom and liberty are not a Christian concept. They existed a long time. You would not want the Puritan lifestyle. Go look it up. You would not live that. Okay. You would find it too dictatorial and not freedom at all. Okay. Sorry. It's as bad as Islam with all their Sharia laws. Okay. It's bad. I do believe that that's what they want. Okay. And I'm sorry, puritanical society was anything but loving. Okay. You seem to forget, and it was Puritans who killed witches. Okay. For weird stuff that they couldn't prove. I'm sorry, they had no due process. They argued against due process. They argued against trial by jury. You need to do some more research if you think that Christianity has been all love and light since the beginning. That's a load of shit. Okay. It's never been that way. I got the whole Middle Ages to speak against that. Okay. I do agree that that's true. I think the real problem with Christians is they live in a state of freedom, and they don't realize that if they got rid of that by implementing Christian principles, I think you would have a problem. Okay. Yep. They can't, where the new state where there can be no dissent from Puritanism. You seem to forget the history of Puritanism. There was this guy named Oliver Cromwell that took over the British government. And after 10 years, they kicked him out because he was more tyrannical than the king. Okay. You seem to be forgetting that part of history. Okay. And the Puritans became persecuted because they were kicked out. And so they came to the United States so they could practice their very tyrannical Puritanism here in the United States. Okay. That's why they left. They couldn't have their way in the UK. So they came here. Okay. There were good reasons that the Puritans were persecuted because they weren't exactly love and light. Okay. This idea that you have that Christianity is love and light, it's not bared out with history. Okay. I got a video on that one coming up here. Yeah, exactly. Okay. It's the outcast issue. And Kirk doesn't want to seem to deal with that. He kind of glosses over a couple times in the video that I just did. But, they didn't want pure Quakerism or this form of Protestantism or this form. It's like, but I don't know. I don't know. But they don't see the fact that Christianity in general is like that in general too. I don't think a Muslim would want to live under a Christian nation. I don't think a Christian would want to live under a Muslim state religion. It's best to keep religion out of politics. They at least had, the point is they had democratic action. The concept of democracy doesn't have anything to flip and do with religion. It is a human concept where people say, hey, let's vote. Okay, democracy has no issue. You're conflating two ideas, democracy and rights. Those are two different discussions. Okay, yes, the Greeks had slavery, and yes, women didn't vote. Okay, but I hate to break the news to you, the United States didn't allow women to vote until 1920. Okay, Christianity, your Christian religion, didn't allow women to vote either. Okay, what are you saying? Okay, you're conflating two ideas. Democracy, the idea of having a group of people vote on something instead of having a single ruler, is the issue of democracy. And that was everywhere. That's been all over the world. Okay, the idea that groups of people can make a decision together is a very human concept. It has nothing, I repeat, nothing to do with Christianity. Where in the Bible does it say set up your government to be democratic? Give me that, because that's what Christians say they base their stuff on. Give me that. Okay, do you have that? Okay, no, because it doesn't exist. Okay, my point is this: democracy was everywhere. It's among pirates, it's among Vikings, it's among, every society has had democratic type action. It's a human concept. It's not a Christian one. It's not a pagan one. It's not any of those things. Not a religious concept at all. It's just a human idea. Okay, the same with autocratic rule, human idea. Oligarchies, human idea. It doesn't have anything to do with Christianity. Christianity didn't create those things. They were already here. Okay, they were already here. Okay, as far as rights, that's a different discussion altogether. Okay, what right, who has the right to vote in democratics has always been an issue. Okay, in the Republic of Rome, it was senators that bought their way to that power because no, it doesn't. The Enlightenment exists contrary to Christianity. Christian principles, name me a Christian principle and I'll show you an Enlightenment concept that goes against it. Natural rights is a good example. There are no natural rights under Christianity. Go look for it. Go find it. Doesn't exist. You can once again, you're saying something you have no evidence for. Okay. There's no investment. I'm sorry. The Enlightenment did, Azo's very right. The Enlightenment happened in spite of Christianity. Okay. Because the Christians at the time the Enlightenment was happening, they did not like what was coming out of the Enlightenment. Okay. Yeah, you're right. But you know what? The reason why the Enlightenment happened is Christianity began to lose its political power in Europe. It started to become fragmented, and it allowed the Enlightenment to happen, because before, Christianities were just as bad as the people in Afghanistan today. You seem to be forgetting the fact that one of the most oppressive religions besides Islam has been Christianity. Okay, it has been very oppressive throughout the Middle Ages. Once Christianity began to break apart because of its own internal schisms, the Enlightenment becomes possible because nobody's there to stifle the Enlightenment and snuff it out. Okay, that's how the Enlightenment got started. Is Nobody could stop it. Okay. Suddenly people began to think for themselves and weren't engaged in this Christian nonsense. The idea that Christianity is the origin of the Enlightenment has been proven false by academia many, many times. It happened because Christianity began to lose its political hold on Europe. And then the Enlightenment becomes possible because of the freedom from Christianity that becomes allowed. Okay. Yes, the government. Yes, it has. See, this is the thing. And the government is connected with Islam. And Islam says we can't have that Enlightenment stuff because that's a threat to Islam. Okay. Sorry. When you look at religion, they always stifle things that are Enlightenment values. Okay. They always go against them. It's not easy to understand. It's a disagreeable point. You're making a point that a lot of people disagree with and academia would speak against. Okay. And a lot of people, including myself, would speak against. No, Christianity, Islam is surviving despite science. A lot of religions are adaptable. They change their beliefs. They change their dogmas. They're run by human beings, created by human beings, and human beings are flexible. And so religions like Christianity are just very flexible. That's how they survive. Science and Christianity go up against each other all the time, and Christianity basically loses, and then it says, okay, we'll just go along with you, and switches its beliefs. Okay. Religion is, as I put it, a prostitute. It will do anything and say anything and be anything in order to be in bed with political power. Okay. And Christianity is one of the worst perpetrators. Okay. That's why I oppose it. So as a former Christian. Okay. Yes. That's the problem. Okay. The Enlightenment couldn't take place in, say, medieval Christian Europe. It's until that whole thing got broken down but it's the modern thing. Okay. The modern stuff comes out of the fact that Christianity lost its grip on power, that the state religions began to crumble, things like that. So what good historical record? When your whole thing is based on a lie, there's nothing good that's going to come out of that. Okay. I'm sorry. I can celebrate the goodness of humanity without any religion. I've done it many times. Okay. I've done it many times. So, but yeah, I'm sorry. Christianity is just flexible. They're a good prostitute. Okay. They change with the times. And that's how they continue to survive. They just have this mentality. We can change our theology, our dogma, our doctrine at the drop of a hat when anything changes. And that's how they survive. Okay. It doesn't mean that they're the source of all those things. It just means that they're really good at getting in bed with them. Yeah, I would agree. They don't address the same questions. The problem is you do get conflict. Like, okay, you get this conservative Christian that believes that the earth was created in 6 days by God. And then you take science and it's like, no, that's not possible. Okay. And you end up with things. So that's an assertion without evidence. I have good things come my way as an atheist, and God has nothing to do with it. My hugs from my grandchildren are good, and they have nothing to do with God. They have everything to do with me and my relationship with my grandkid. That's an assertion that everybody likes to believe because it gives them nice warm fuzzies, but it's not true. Goodness comes from people. Okay. If you want to know the source of goodness or evil, look at human beings. Okay. Yes. You learn as a Christian to hate other religions if you push it far enough. I saw it all the time in the church that people just hated other religions, hated other sects of Christianity. Religion is a good way to reinforce your tribalism and hate other people. So, and I think the real problem I have with Kirk and his whole video here is it's kind of reinforcing that, and it bothers me. So, so there's that. Hey, Captive. Thank you, sir, for being here. I know you were here early, and I hope this has been a bit enlightening. I got to sign off here because I got to get ready for work. But I wanted to react to this video. I want to, for those of you that are watching and watching later, I'd like to hear some comments about this video. Do you think that this is a good format for me and things like that? So it's one of those things where this is the first time I've tried something like this, and I want to hear some feedback on it. So I appreciate it. But I do have to run because I have to get ready for work. I want to thank everybody for stopping by. You guys are great. Make sure that you like the video, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel, I appreciate it if you did. As always, there's ways to support the channel, PayPal, all that stuff in my links in the description. You super chat, super thanks, becoming a member, all appreciated. Becoming a citizen of the Rabyd Nation, being a member. Thank you very much to all my members. To my mods tonight, thank you very much, guys. Appreciate your work. I'm glad you're here. It allows me to focus more on the discussion at hand. I appreciate that. Thank you very, very much. And as always, live your best life. You only get one go around, and then it's over. So make sure you take all your time, money, and opportunities and spend them on yourself and the people you love and care for, and to make this a better world. You'll be happier if you do. And as always, thanks for stopping by, and I will catch you next time.